So I'll just start from the heap, not even this one. We'll start from this. Yeah, this is the summary of the same whatever we discussed. I'll just repeat this slide and continue from here. Right. So what is this high end and low end? So as I told you in the previous class, this represents the memory addresses. Low end, you can assume that as, I mean, as an example, 0000 address, the lower end of the memory. And high end or the upper end is, say, as an example, FFFF, the address, the toppest address. So this need not be 00 and so I just told you the high end and the low end of your memory that is allocated for your program. As an example, I gave you 00 to FFFF that way. So your program would have allocated some memory. That memory will be comprising of what is this called program code and static data. So that is at compile time. So this is constant data. The highlighted one, this is the constant size, memory size. Maybe your program is 1 kilobyte and your data is 2 kilobytes as an example. So total of 3 kilobytes is always allocated as a constant storage. So that is decided at the compile time, and that is the value that is allocated to your program when your program starts running. Apart from this constant storage requirements, you will also have another piece of memory that is on the top side. This one, this is the dynamic or varying size in memory. I mean, of course, the maximum value is fixed. Let us assume this entire this thing, this entire memory is say 32 kilobytes. Out of 32 kilobytes, 2 and 1 kilobyte were gone here. That is 3 kilobytes are in the fixed size area. So out of 32, if 3 are gone, so 29 kilobytes are on the upper side, the dynamic runtime allocated memory, 29 kilobytes. Out of the 29 kilobytes, what is the stack size and what is the heap size? Can anyone tell? Looking at the diagram, 29 kilobytes is on the dynamic side. Out of that 29, how much is the stack space and how much is the heap space, or how much MB is the heap and how much KB is the stack? Anyone?
So stack and heap will vary, right?
Correct. Yeah. So stack can go up to 29 kilobytes, provided there is no heap. I mean, there is no dynamic memory allocation, only stack is allocated. In that case, I mean, as an example, it can go up to 29 kilobytes and vice versa. That is, no stack is allocated, only heap is allocated. So then heap size can go up to 29 kilobytes. So it's dynamically allocated, or it's a dynamic requirements which is varying depending on your stack requirements and depending on your dynamic memory requirements. Clear? But your total size of your program's allocation is fixed, which is in this case 32 kilobytes. Okay. I mean, as an example, we told 32 kilobytes. Is this clear? So this is how every program will run in memory, particularly when your program is running under an operating system. Even otherwise, this kind of a setup should be done by the programmer. That this is the size, or this is the maximum size the program can look at, and this is the fixed size, and this is the dynamic size. That way. So we have understood the different types of program data and the program memory. Now coming to the pointers and dynamic memory. I mean, of course, most of the things are repeating, but still, you can hope that there will be something new. So this first point is dynamic variables are used just like static variables, except that they are not declared and therefore they have no identifiers. So there is no variable name. They are not declared explicitly at the compile time. They are created during runtime and not when the program is compiled. So this is the difference. And storage for this comes from the free store or the heap that we saw just now. The creation of new dynamic variables is called memory allocation, and the memory is called dynamic memory. Okay. So dynamic variables and dynamic memory. So where are these dynamic variables allocated? In dynamic memory. They get created, and that's called as memory allocation. Right. So now question is, why use dynamic memory allocation? So any answers?
Sir, it helps us to fulfill the needs of uncertain memory allocation. Like during the runtime, we might need a large amount of memories. That's why. And also, a large amount of memory can't be. For example, I can't declare a array of 1,000 size in a stack. That's why I also need a dynamic memory.
No, it's not that you cannot declare an array of 1,000 or a stack size of 1,000. All of you agree? I mean, do you have any such restriction that you cannot declare an array of 1,000 bytes or kilobytes or even stack memory of 1,000 byte, kilobyte, whatever is the number? All of you agree? Can we not do it, or can we do it? One of your classmates says we cannot do it. Can we do it or cannot do it?
I think so. In theory, it should be possible, but a couple of times I tried it, I got an error, sir.
What error?
I think so. I'm not sure that there was some issue with the amount of memory being allocated. So I think so. I took an array of size 1,000 or something like that, and I got some error. So when I reduced the array size, it started working. So something along those lines, maybe.
Okay. Maybe there was some what do you call a problem or issue with your program memory model. Maybe you have selected by default, not you. I mean, by default, the program model might be of a smaller memory size. Therefore, it might have not put it in your. I mean, your program might have not put in that particular size. But otherwise, as you also mentioned, theoretically it is possible. There is no such restrictions. You have to use appropriate or select appropriate memory model. I mean, memory model in the sense we get something called as small, tiny, huge, large. So many such varieties of memory models exist. It's not. I mean, it's not a big deal. You are just mentioning what is your data size, what is your program size. That's all. I mean, how many MB or how many kilobytes is your data size and program. So if you select an appropriate model, then you should be able to run or continue with your program. Yeah, as you pointed out, theoretically it is possible, and practically also it is possible. Only thing is the limit is up whatever your compiler supports. If your compiler supports so much of kilobytes or megabytes of RAM, then you can still continue using it. Right. Let us observe what are the limitations of your static storage class. So first is we have to predict the total amount of memory that I will be using before I run the program. This is the limitation, right? As somebody pointed out, if he wants to have 1,000 kilobytes or 1,000 megabytes of array, I mean the size of the array, but point is I don't know, or the user may not use the entire allocated memory, but still it gets allocated. That means basically you're not allowing others to use that space. You got some space, but you are not using it. So you may underutilize the given memory. So this is one problem. Why you may underutilize? Because prediction of the total amount of memory may not be possible. Why it is not possible? Why we cannot predict the total memory required? Depends on the program, right? Lot of programs are there wherein the memory requirements depends on the user's input. So the user may input 10 customer information or 100 customers information, or the customer may buy 100 items or 10 items, or I mean, as an example I'm giving you a shopkeeper's program. So we have no idea how many items a customer might buy. So if you plan to put it in an array, then the items that are bought, the list of items that are bought, then what should be the size of an array? Practically, it should be 1,000 or 10,000 or kind of, right? Because we have no idea how many units a customer can buy. I mean, as an example, I'm giving you. So therefore, we will not be able to predict the total amount of memory that is required. Then, if I require more memory during runtime, then static memory allocation cannot fulfill the need. Memory allocation cannot be released during runtime. So you cannot take additional memory and you cannot give back the excess memory. Both are an issue with storage class, static storage class. Getting it? I hope you are able to follow. You cannot take extra memory in static storage and you cannot give back the excess memory, saying that I don't need this. So both are not possible. So therefore, to overcome all these limitations, I have my dynamic memory. So dynamic memory, I can have the data memory size to take on variable values as per the runtime requirements. So I need not predict. I need not predict what is the requirement. So I can take it as and when required. Then dynamic memory allocation. This is another advantage. Locally created variables will live past end of function calls. I'll explain you these point later. I mean, in the further slides. Just note down this point. That's enough. That the you need not think about the word locally right now. Dynamic variables live past the end of function calls. That's enough. Dynamic variables will live past end of function calls. So when I say function calls, the local word will come there. So try to relate that. I'll explain this point later in the next coming slides. Then to create many data structures that are used in programs. So many data structures that are there would not be possible if you don't have dynamic memory allocation. So therefore, again, dynamic memory allocation is a requirement. And another advantage or another point that we were discussing is that I can give back the allocated memory when not required. I can give back the allocated memory when not required, right? So a few more points about heap memory. So first point is, important point. So it is possible to allocate memory and lose the pointer to that region without freeing it. This is called memory leak. So read the sentence again. So what you're doing is you are taking some memory from the operating system for your dynamic memory allocation, and you use that for certain duration, and then you will not give it back. That means you have not freed it or you have not given it back, and you lost the link in the sense you lost the pointer to that region. Then you will not be able to do anything with that memory. You neither cannot use, you cannot even give it back. So this is called memory leak. Following? So what will happen? Such memory leaks can gradually cause the heap to become full because you have taken some more allocation, but you never bothered to give it back. Even though your work is finished, that is your requirements is done, but you did not give it back. Then in such a case, the heap becomes full. And when the heap is full and still if you try to allocate some more memory, an attempt made to allocate more memory, and if there is no enough memory in the heap, then an exception is generated. It's an error, right? Because you are asking for more memory and there is no more memory. Done. All the memory that is allocated is finished. So these points you should be aware of. Whenever you are using dynamic memory allocation, you should make sure that you will give it back when not in use. So how do you do this allocation and giving it back, that is freeing? So these are the two function calls. One is malloc and kelloc for allocating memory dynamically at runtime, and the amount, the function that is used to give back or release the allocated memory is free. These two functions, that is malloc, kelloc and free, they are used in C and C++. Both C and C++, support these functions. But we have few or additional operators in C++ which are called new and delete, that perform the same task of allocating and freeing of memory, new and delete. That is only in C++. Clear? We will see how the new and delete operators are used. So new is to create an object, and delete, as the name says, destroy the object. So why we are using new? So as I told you, C++ is nothing but improvised version of C. Improvised in the sense you will be, that is, the programmer will be made more disciplined, more systematic, and things like that. Means all the common errors that were found and common mistakes or common pitfalls. So all such things are taken care of in C++ in a very precise or a clear manner. So therefore, we will see what is the advantage of using new over malloc. So there are certain advantages, agreed. We will see that. So the first point is it automatically computes the size of the data object. So no need to use the size of operator. So this size of operator is, which is, for those students who are familiar with C, you might be familiar with malloc, size of, and all that. So here in new, you need not use that. So automatically the size is computed. And it automatically returns the correct pointer type. So no need to use the typecasting. And it is possible to initialize the object while creating the memory space. So these are the things that are, advantages of new over malloc. So like any other operator, new and delete are operators which can be overloaded. The new operator. New is an operator in C++. It takes predefined data type as an operand, allocates memory to hold one value of the data type that is passed as a parameter to it in the heap. Finally, returns the address of the allocated block, the starting address of the block. Suppose you allocate 10 bytes, then it is 10 bytes are consecutive 10 bytes that all of us are knowing it. It's a consecutive memory chunk of 10 bytes, and the starting address of that chunk is returned as the link or as the pointer. This address need not be explicitly typecast, since the new operator returns the address at the correct typecast. So this address can then be stored in a pointer of an appropriate type. So the allocated block of memory can then be accessed through the pointer, right? Quite simple, quite clear about the new operator, what it does. So it does so many things. So example, x equal to new int. That's an example. So to create an object, so my object name is x, and it is of type int, and I'm saying x equal to new int. So if you say x equal to new int, then what should the x be of? What type? X should be of what type? What is the data type of x? It should be a pointer variable, right? In this case, it should be, that is in the example x equal to new int. So it should be what data type? X should be of?
It should be as a pointer to integer.
Pointer to an integer, correct. So the return type is a pointer, so we should be appropriately declaring that data type. So this, it says pointer variable. Pointer variable is a pointer of data type. Then here, new variable, the new operator allocates sufficient memory to hold a data object of type data type and returns the address of the object. The data type may be any valid data type. So the pointer variable holds the address of the memory space allocated. Right. So let us see the examples. One example we saw over there. So many more examples are here. So p equal to new int, q equal to new float, So what are P and Q? P and Q are supposed to be declared in this way, right? Int star P and float star Q. So this is about integer floating, that is the basic data types. Now we can even do the similar thing for user defined data types or classes basically. So we can even do like this. We can combine the declarations and the assignments together. Int star P equal to new int. So similarly float star Q equal to new float. So this is for the data types or the predefined data types examples. So this is how I will be using star P equal to 25, star Q equal to 7.5, that way. I can even use this kind of a allocation or initialization, sorry, not allocation, initialization. New int of 25, new float of 7.5. This is also the alternate method of using the new operator for initializing. So all these examples are still of the basic data type. You can even do the classes also, right? So once you do this, that is okay. Let me begin from here. So int star my int pointer. So there is a pointer of int pointer, and that my int pointer equal to new int. So the moment these two statements are executed, what will happen? Of course, the first statement, you'll get this getting created. That is, there is a pointer being created. And then in the second statement, in the free store, there will be a block allocated of say 4 bytes because integer, no? So it is 4 bytes, assuming it int as 4 bytes. So 4-byte block is created, and the starting address of that 4-byte block is now stored in my int pointer. Clear? Any questions till now?
No doubt, sir.
Yeah, good. So now this is done. That is some 4 bytes allocation is done, and this is done. Now when I say my star my int ptr equal to 1, 2, 3, what will happen? This area or this memory will be filled now with a value 1, 2, 3, 123. Now I have a question. So which memory is my int ptr stored in? There is my int ptr right here. Where it is stored? This pointer, where it is stored?
So the pointer is stored in the stack.
Stack?
Stack of the function in which it would be called.
Okay. Any other answer or any more clarity you want to give for that answer? I mean, anything you want to add to that answer, or anybody else wants to answer?
So my int ptr will be stored in the program data, whereas the new int will allocate a memory from heap.
Program data. What do you mean by program data?
Okay, so you give me the options. What answer you want?
Okay, right. Yeah, you know the options also. See, the types of memory that we discussed was, the global, static. I mean, in the sense, stack memory, then heap memory, and then what was the other one? Stack, heap, and static data or the static memory. Right. So I expected your answer to be in this way. I mean, assuming my int pointer to be a local function, local to a function. So therefore, it will be in a stack memory. And if my int pointer was in a global this thing, then it would be in the static memory. Okay. And very clearly, it is not a part of the heap. So my question was that, I wanted you people to be sure that my int pointer is not a part of the heap memory. My int pointer is a part of your other memory, that is either static memory or stack memory. Whereas using this pointer, you will be accessing the heap memory. Okay. Yeah, your answer was right, but I just wanted that one more sentence to be added. Right. So the new operator. Creating arrays using the new operator. So I can use, new operator to create arrays this way. Int star p equal to new int of 10. So similarly, multi-dimensional arrays, I can give like this. Why this is illegal? The last option it says new int 3, 5, that is 3 by 5 by unknown. I mean, the third dimension is not known. So it should be known. It should be known so that allocation can be done accordingly. So since it is not known, compiler will not process this. So it is illegal, or you cannot go ahead. So similarly, so any dimension that is not given is illegal. Clear? So you can create not just a single variable. You can create an array of new array of data types using the new operator. Just like this. I mean, a simple example. So the first byte of the first element will be stored, the address of the first byte of the first element will be stored in the pointer, and the remaining will be following that. So if you simply write my int ptr of 1 equal to 325, for example, what will happen in the second element, 325 will get stored, right? So that's quite common. I mean, most of you will know that how arrays operate. So observe that the contents of, or the star or the reference operator is not used when I'm using the arrays. So just a point to note. So all of you know that, but just a point to note that. Right. So another example of using new with a array. So just observe the program. So we are doing nothing here, just a simple array of integers, and you are taking the values of those integers into the array. So just look at that. So enter the size. So once the size is known, you will create the new int of size that much, and then continue. Just look at the program. So you're not doing anything, just taking the values and printing out the values. So I have highlighted how your PTR or your array is accessed through the PTR. So those statements are highlighted. If you can observe that, I don't know how clearly your screen is to observe that. So all the highlighted points are more important. So showing you how the array can be accessed using the PTR. Okay. So until now we did with the data types, the basic data types. Now one more example of new operator using the object instead of a basic data type. Instead of int, float, character, we are going into objects. So the object name is the class name is distance. So this is the program. Now observe the program. Again, observe the highlighted lines more. The remaining program is quite simple. So distance pointer. So you have created a pointer to the distance class. Then PTR equal to new distance of size. Similar structure of what example which we saw in the previous class, I mean previous slide. PTR of I dot set feet dot set inch. So observe this. Of course, I have not given you the class details, but assume that set feet and set inch are member functions of the class distance. So showing you how to access the member functions. PTR of I dot set feet of A. Okay. Assume that set feet and set inch are the member functions of the class distance. And observe how they are accessed. Right. Coming to this slide, so it says objects created using new lives till it is killed. Sync in, that is objects created using new operator lives till it's killed. That is till you say delete or destroy or free, whatever you call. The new operator in C++ can be used to create objects that can be used after returning from a function. So this is what I told you. One of the advantages in the initial slides, I told that I'll discuss this in detail in the coming slides. So this is the point. The new operator in C++ is used to create objects that can be used after returning from a function. I'll show you that. Observe here what we are doing. Observe the program. So you have date, myPTR, star myPTR. Okay, so you have created a pointer of data type date, or date might be a class now. It's not a data type, it's a class. myPTR equal to create date. So you created a date. I mean, you called the create date, and that will create a date and give the pointer to myPTR. Then you entered this value, cout. Now look at this side of the code. So this create date code is here. Create date. So allows the user to create a data object. So int day, month, year, character dummy, cout, enter dd, mm, yy. So you enter all those dd, mm, all that. So that value will be now getting stored. Observe here, new date of day, month, comma, year. You are creating a new dynamic memory in this function. Which function is this? Create date function. You created that. You allocated a new memory to a date object. You used new here. Then what you are returning? You are returning the pointer. Observing that you created and dynamic memory over here, that is, you allocated, you asked for allocation in this function, then you are returning the pointer to this function here. myPTR equal to create date. You got the pointer here. So observe what happened. You have exited this function. Which function? Create date function. You finished and you exited, because return, you encountered return and you came here. And once you finish this and come here, what happens to this temp PTR? Or what happens to the allocation? Temp PTR was a local, variable, right? Temp PTR was a local variable, right? Local to this particular create date function.
Yes, sir.
So if it is a local variable, then it's supposed to destroy it. I mean, when you exit this function, you're supposed, that value or that variable is supposed to be destroyed. So now, do you expect that the date that you created got destroyed also?
Sir, that the variable is destroyed once the function gets over, but the value in TMP PTR, it's in the heap. So that still remains intact.
No, the value was not in the heap. The value got transferred. Let us assume the address was, as a simple case, address was 1234H. So the address where the memory was allocated in the heap was 1234H.
Yes,
so that
sir.
value 1234 is transferred here. So
yes.
my underscore PTR still has the value 1234. So my underscore PTR is a local variable, and that has a value local to this function, and that has a value of 1234. And where is this 1234? It is in the heap. And did you destroy the heap? No. So therefore, I'm saying that objects get created using new will live till you kill it. So we have not killed it. We have not said free 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, something of that line. Free 1, 2, 3, 4 we have not done. So therefore, even though you created locally here, but even if you exit this function call, still the memory that you allocated will remain, will be living. So that is the point that I wanted to mention. Clear? Right.
Yes, sir.
So pointers to objects. So this is the next topic, pointers to objects. So pointers can point to objects as well as to built-in data types. So it can be objects as well as built-in data types. So as an example, date. Date is the class name. So date.set, date.display, I can use such functions. And that is if you use date as the, are you able to see the pointer?
No, sir.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. So if you use date as a regular object, if you declare date as a regular object, then this is how we use the date.set, date.display. And this is how we use the member functions. Now, instead, if you use date PTR, I mean, if you declare date PTR like this, pointer to an object, then how do you, sorry, this is pointer eraser. Okay. I'll use a pointer cursor only. Yeah. If you use date PTR, then this is how date PTR new date. Then date PTR pointing to, that is arrow operator is also this name is called arrow operator. So pointing to our arrow operator. So date PTR arrow operator set of this value. So this is how we use for pointers to objects. Means when you declare pointers to objects, this is how we access the member functions. Clear? So this alternate method, but it looks less elegant, but it is 100% right. Looks less elegant. Okay. So another point of about pointers, which is self-pointing classes. A class might contain a pointer to an object of its own class, but not an object of its own class. So it can contain a pointer, but not an object. I'll show you the example. So some class, this class name itself is some class. So class, some class star PTR. This is okay. This is permittable. Pointer to the class, whereas this is not permitted. So the first line says contain a pointer. Yes, agreed. Okay. But it cannot contain object of its own type. So what is the class name? Some class. And what you are doing inside the class? Again, you are saying some class obj. So this is not allowed. So cannot do it. Logically, you have no meaning in it. Clear? So this, the first point, which is the pointer inside a class to itself, is called self-pointing classes. Self-pointing class. Right. Now coming to the delete operator. So delete is to destroy an object. So delete and pointer variable. This is how easy it is used to use. This is how simple it is to use. Delete and pointer variable. Just delete, you call the delete operator with the pointer variable. That's it. So examples are shown here, delete P, delete Q. So whenever a data object is no longer required, you can destroy it so that the memory can be released for reuse. You're giving back the memory to the operating system so that OS can reallocate whenever required. So delete size pointer variable, that is for if you have an array. This is how you can delete. So size specifies the number of elements in the array to be freed. Delete star P. If you don't specify the size, if it is an empty this thing, then entire array will be deleted. Clear? This is how we can use delete operator. So what is the purpose of delete operator? To free the allocated memory with the new. So whenever you use new, you are supposed to follow that somewhere in your program, the delete operator. You cannot use only new. Why? If you use only new, what is the issue? Memory leak. Memory leak will be the issue because you keep on allocating, you never gave it back. You never used a delete operator to give it back. So then one point of time, memory might become full. Your heap memory is no longer available. So therefore, every new should be having a equivalent or its corresponding delete operator. The delete operator should be called on a pointer or dynamically allocated memory when it is no longer used. So this is how we can delete. This is how we can use the delete operator. So once you delete, you cannot reuse that. Once you delete, that is, you are giving back the memory. So therefore, if you try to access that, then it is of no use, right? Because that memory may be accessed or may be allocated for another program or another this thing. So after delete is called on a memory region, that region can no longer be accessed by the program. Convention is to set pointer to deleted memory to null. So as I told you, new must be having a corresponding delete. Otherwise, program will have a memory leak. So new and delete need not be in the same function. We have seen that already. You got a new in a different function, you can have delete in another function. Need not be in the same function. So few points on pointers. A pointer not pointing to an object is considered unassigned. An unassigned pointer variable must not be dereferenced. A null value should not be dereferenced. A pointer which is pointing to a deallocated memory is called a dangling pointer. So we will discuss this dangling pointer in the next coming slides. A pointer which is pointing to a deallocated memory is called a dangling pointer. So we'll discuss dangling pointers in this slides. So what do you mean by dangling pointers? Dangling pointers can occur when two or more pointers point to the same object and one of the pointers is used with the delete operator. I'll show you with an example, but this is the statement. You can just try to observe that. So dangling pointers can occur when two or more, let us take 2 pointers in our simple case, when 2 pointers point to the same object and one of the pointers is used with the delete operator. So what about the other pointer? The other pointer is pointing to an object which is not existing because you deleted using the other pointer. The same object got deleted using the other pointer. So therefore this pointer is pointing to a dummy thing. So therefore it's called a dangling pointer. So this is the example. You can see that both the pointers P1 and P2, both the pointers are pointing to 42. Right? When 2 or more pointers point to the same object is in this case is 42. Both of them are pointing to 42. Then what happens after some time? What you do is you say delete P1. What will happen? So this integer link, this P1 linked to 42 is removed, and this location, whatever you were storing this 42 at, that location is freed, returned to the free store. This value is, this memory is freed. And what is happening with P2? P2 is still pointing to the same location. P2 is pointing to a location which is already freed, and P2 has no idea. Pointer 2, that is P2, has no idea that that location is not existing. So therefore P2 became a dangling pointer. Got it? Here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is very important when you are doing programming with respect to, or whenever with respect to, in the sense, whenever you use dynamic memory allocation, you should be very, very clear because such cases do come across when you are programming, particularly data structures. So you will have such situations wherein there is a very easy way in creating dangling pointers, which you should not be doing. We should be aware of and try to make sure that you're not doing such mistakes. Right. Coming, further, discussions on the same topic. An inaccessible memory location, also called a memory leak, results from the reassignment of a pointer without first releasing the memory it is pointing to. So this is another method of memory leak. I'll show you how. See, this is simple and straightforward, or that is 100% right. P1 is pointing to 42, P2 is pointing to 17. No issues. Everything is okay. Everything is clear until now. Now let us see what will happen after some point of time. Your program will do something like this. What you executed is P2 equal to P1. Somewhere down the line in your program, you said P2 equal to P1. What will this effectively do? You say P2 equal to P1. What will this do?
So P2 will point to 42.
42, correct. P2 will also point to 42, something like this. P1 was already pointing to 42. Now P2 will also start pointing to 42. Then what happens to 17? That becomes an inaccessible object. Clear? So you will never be able to recover that 17. That location, not 17, that memory. You will never be able to access that memory unless your program got killed, entire program. So this is another example of memory leak. You forgot to release. Okay, any questions? You forgot to release P2. Yeah, you forgot to release P2. You should have freed P2, and then you should have done that allocation, that reassignment to 42, but you did not do that. Right. So an inaccessible memory location can also be caused by inappropriate use of a new operator. Let us see that now. So this is simple, P1 pointing to 42. Later on, somewhere down the line in your program, what you will do? You will simply say P1 equal to new int. So you reassigned P1 to something new. Then what happened? So new location got created, or there is new allocation got allocated, and then P1 points to that new allocation. Then what happened to 42? Inaccessible. So this is another method in which you get inaccessible you create inaccessible locations, and you will end up in memory leak. Getting it? Right. A simple example of a simple program of what happens, when you create new and all that. Very simple example just to give you the insight. So char star PTR. So you are trying to create a pointer to character type. So that is shown here. This is the pointer to character type. This is the location where this pointer is stored is at 3000, and the contents of that location is still unknown. You just getting into the execution. Then when you say pointer equal to new char of 5, so somewhere in your heap memory, 5 bytes of character, 5 bytes got allocated starting from 6000, 6000, 6001, 6002, 6003, 6004. So all those 5 consecutive bytes got allocated, and the starting address is now stored inside the PTR. So look at the contents of PTR. Contents of PTR is 6000, where PTR itself is stored at 3000. Look at that. Then string copy PTR comma by. So what you're trying to do is you're copying BYE into the location which you have PTR. So BYE came into this particular memory allocation. Then what you're doing, PTR of U, PTR of 0 equal to U. So now B will get replaced by U. Getting it? So I'm trying to give you how you can access the individual locations and what is happening internally and all that, so that students who are not familiar with this will also be following it very easily. Then the moment you say delete, observe this, delete, you have not approved, I mean, you have not supplied with the size value. So it simply says delete the entire array, delete array point PTR. So what will happen? That gets deallocated. Deallocates the memory, I mean the array pointed by to PTR. PTR itself is not deallocated. Observe that the value of PTR becomes undefined. Following, getting this, the value of PTR got undefined. So the 6000 got removed now. It's undefined. Now you say PTR equal to null, just for safety reasons. To make sure that PTR is not storing any valid data. So to make sure that, you can even say PTR equal to null. Clear? Any questions?
No doubt, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so arrays of objects. So now we are going into the arrays of objects. So just as an example, so rectangle is the class name, objects of the elements, rooms of 8. So you have created rooms of, 8 array of rooms of type rectangle. So default constructor of object is used when array is defined. So we know that what is a constructor is known to us. Whenever we create objects, constructors get called, right? So that's our next topic. Once we finish this, we'll go into constructors and destructors as quickly as possible. So default constructor for the object is used when array is defined. So accessing objects in an array. Objects in an array are referenced using subscripts. We know that. So array of 1 or array of 1 dot set width. So that way you can use dot using dot notation. I showed you that. Yeah. So that's the end of this topic. That is, this is mostly about the new and delete operator, the memory, dynamic memory allocation, new and delete operator, how to use that and all. So now we will go with the next topic, which is constructors and destructors. I'll just open that slide. Yeah. Are the new slides visible? Constructors and destructors?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the subtitle says create, initialize and destroy objects in C++ in a disciplined way. That's the only advantage of using constructors and destructors. Means, as I told you, a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors programmers used to do commonly, I mean, common errors and common mistakes. So C++ tries to eliminate all such things by following a disciplined approach. So that is like, one is this constructors and destructors. It is like, as the name says, create, initialize and destroy. You can say this as the what do you call Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara. I mean, the creation is Brahma and sustenance is Vishnu and Maheshwara destroys, kind of. So this is like Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara for for your objects, right? So generic types of member functions. We have constructors to create new objects. We have inspectors. They are just to view or to read the attributes, the values. Mutators to change the attributes. Facilitators to have some operations on the objects, any operation, logical or arithmetic or any other copying and searching and whatever operations, and then destructors for destroying the objects. So this is what we basically do, right? Any program, any C++ program that you take will have these kinds of member functions. Some member functions for constructions, some member function for inspection, some member function for changing the values, that mutation, some member functions for doing some processing, facilitators, some member functions for destructors or destroying the objects. Right. So declaring and initializing simple variables. So that's quite simple and clear. So initialization is the process of storing a value in a newly declared variable. So like this example, default, or the basic data types are quite simple. This is how we initialize: int counter equal to 0, char star owner equal to null. So these are known to us. These are way in which we declare and initialize simple variables. Now initializing class objects. So how do we do this? So classes are complex data types or derived data types. So they will have many components. For example, employee can have name, address, ID, etc. Right? So when you declare a variable of this class, then it requires the construction of an object by doing these two things. That is, when you do construction, you're supposed to allocate required blocks of memory. Maybe an employee can take, maybe 50 bytes of data, storage, 50 bytes of storage. So you are supposed to allocate 50 bytes of storage to that employee object. Apart from allocating, you are supposed to give meaningful values to data members, because now data members are too many. Name is there, address is there, telephone number may be there, ID might be there, date of birth might be there, many things of such sort. So all these, components, all these data members, you are supposed to initialize with a proper value, right? So therefore, this constructor will be of good use. Constructor is a function used to initialize data members of an. So same as the name of the class. So we saw this. Then public member, it's a public member function. Constructor is a public member function. So it cannot return anything, not even void. So you cannot write even void in front of the constructor. Then a class can have more than one constructor. That means you can overload the constructor. Default constructor has no parameters. I'll show you, or we will discuss about default constructor in the next few slides. And called automatically. Constructors and destructors both are called automatically. We will see that also. And if you don't write any constructor of your own, then compiler will provide you with one. And if you, that will be basically an empty constructor. So nothing will be there inside that. So compiler will actually provide one constructor, which is of no use. It's a completely empty one. Right. So when are constructors and destructors called? So this is, as expected, for global objects, the object's constructor is called once when the program first begins execution. And for local objects, the constructor is called each time the declaration statement is executed. And when they are destroyed, so local objects are destroyed when they go out of scope, quite natural. And global objects are destroyed when the program ends. Agreed. Destructors are not called if the program ends with abort. So if your program aborts somewhere in between, then destructors will not be called. Clear? Okay. So constructor call for local object. So date today. So you got a class called date and you created date today. So then constructor will be called implicitly. And the moment you come out of the scope, that is the moment you come out of this flower braces, then destructor will be called. Then constructor call for dynamic objects. So p star new equal to new string. So when you try to do a new operator, constructor get called. And when you say delete operator, destructor gets called. This is for dynamic objects. Observe that. Now coming to default constructor. So default constructors takes no arguments, or this is the example of default constructor which has no arguments. You can observe that the list is empty, argument list is empty, or all arguments have default values. This is another example. all arguments, in this case mdy date was the object or the class type. So mdy, all of them have default values. So default constructor is either this or this, not both, one or the other. That's called as a default constructor. If you write a class with no constructor at all, then C++ will write a default constructor for you, and this constructor does nothing, as I told you. So do not rely on compiler generated constructors. Now we are, professional programmers. We are not supposed to do some noise kind of a thing. So now you also start writing constructors for all your objects. See, this is what I'm telling you regarding your mini project, whatever you're doing. So you might have already defined some objects, or basically classes, sorry. You might have defined some classes. So make sure that you have constructors and destructors, and also see to it that you will do some dynamic memory allocation. Whatever topics that we have discussed till now, constructors, destructors, copy constructors maybe, and many such things. All that should be used in your program, in your mini project. Okay, a simple instantiation of a class calls the default constructor. With no arguments calls the default constructor, like this. If all of constructors parameter have default values or default arguments, then that is a default constructor, for example, like this. So we have discussed this, but these are the examples. Creating an object and passing no parameters will cause this constructor to execute. If you don't pass any parameters, then again this default constructor will be called. Multiple constructors. So if you have a program relating to the date and you want to have this various kinds of creating of date today 9/20/2021. So similarly this one September 2021. Similarly 9/2/2021, comma same as today, comma same as today of today. So like this, you want to create or you want to have multiple constructors of this type. That's also possible. So that is function overloading. When we discuss function overloading, you can think about this example and try to make this happen. Right. So overloading constructors. So this is quite simple: rectangle, rectangle, double, comma, double. I mean, you can have multiple constructors in this way. So passing arguments to constructors. So this is how you can write the prototype, and then this is how you can pass this is the definition of your constructor, and this is how one example to invoke this particular constructor, rectangle r of 10,5. So it will invoke the constructor which has arguments in its construction. Constructing array of objects. So complex array, date array. So there is no way to call constructors with arguments for array members, right? So if I want to have arguments for these array members, you will not be able to straight away do this for arrays. So how we can try to do that is using a pointer to an array of object like this. I'll show you that. So I have a pointer to the array of objects of dates. So this is how we can call new date of and make sure that I have a constructor for every new date. So I have 31 dates. I have a corresponding constructor for each of those dates. Otherwise, what happens? A default constructor would be called. So therefore, I don't want to use the default. If I don't want to use the default constructor, I can go with this kind of an allocation. With this kind of an idea, which will give separate initialization for each data or each date. Now coming to destructors. So as I told you, destructors is used to clean up the object prior to closing or exiting the area of the scope. So the class name is preceded by a tilde sign. So no parameters and no return value. That's the speciality of destructors. So it is again called automatically. So when called automatically in these two scenarios, that is when program control exists the scope of an object, or by delete operator. So if you don't provide a destructor by your own, compiler will give you 1. Destructors are called automatically when an object is destroyed. Destructor perform termination housekeeping before the system reclaims the object's memory. So only one destructor per class. So there is no overloading of destructors. So if constructor allocates dynamic memory, destructor should release it. Now, constructor, destructors, and dynamically allocated objects. Observe that. I mean, this statement rectangle star R, that is, you are creating a pointer to a rectangle, and new rectangle you are creating. So then when you want to destroy, you are supposed to write this statement delete R. So this statement should be inside the destructor. Only one default constructor and one destructor. So do not provide more than one default constructor for a class, one that takes no arguments and the one that has default arguments. So you will not be able to compile this because there is a ambiguity here. Since a destructor takes no argument, there can only be one destructor. So arrays of objects, so must use initializer list. We have not discussed initializer list, maybe in the next class sometime, or maybe after that next session, we'll be discussing initializer lists. We should use initializer list to invoke constructors for arrays of objects. So this is how you can do that. So this is an example. I have an array of 3 rectangles, and I can use this kind of a constructor to initialize each of those values of rectangles. I need not call the same constructor. I can call like this. So another example. Arrays of objects. Right. So now this program will try to demonstrate the order of constructors and destructors invocation. So look at the program. So class create and destroy. Now this doing nothing. The class name is create and destroy. It will simply create. There is create and destroy constructor here with an int parameter, and then there is a destructor here, and that private data is int data private. So now let us write the constructor and destructor for this previous class. This class, it simply has to do, just a construction and a destructor. Just do that. So let us start writing the code for constructor. It's quite simple. So the same name, create and destroy, the same name of the class. So int value. So you are taking a value. You are just saying data equal to value. And you are simply writing this statement so that you know you are executing a constructor. Cout object data. Object is this value, and you are in the constructor. So just to make sure, or just to understand that you are executing a constructor, you are typing this, or you are showing this on the screen. Similarly for the destructor. So no arguments, observe that. So simply you write this is the object which is getting destroyed. Clear? So this is the constructor and this is the destructor. Observe the program. You can even write the code, because in the next few slides you can try to predict the sequence. This is the constructor and destructor code for this particular class. This is the class. This is the code. So the code. So this is the main code. So create, void create, void create and destroy first. So there is a function called create, and then there is a create and destroy, object getting created, first object with the value 1. Now int main, observe the code of int main, cout. So global created before main. So that is this first. Global created before main. Then create and destroy second. So inside the main, you are doing the second call. Second variable of create and destroy type. Second. Then look at the next, this thing, static third. So third variable is a static data, local static. Then you call the create function. You called it. And then after the create function, you are again doing a fourth instance of create and destroy. Then local automatic in main. That is, this fourth is a local automatic in main. Just observe the code. Or as I told you, it's better if you write the code, then you will be able to predict the output. Now this is the create code. That is, the function was in the previous slide. So that code is here, create. Inside create, you have done nothing. You have just created another variable, fifth variable. Of course, this is a local variable now. Then continuing the code here, again, there is a static local for this create. Static local in create function. Sixth value is a static local to create. Then seventh is a simple automatic local automatic, seventh. Observe that. So you have 7 variables, 1 to 7. 1 is global, 2 is local, 3 is maybe static local. So like that. So that is what I told you. You keep writing the code so that you can observe what is happening. What is happening in the sense, we are trying to look at the order of constructors and destructors invocation. Now tell me the order. What is the first constructor get that is getting called? What is the first constructor that is getting called?
So the global one, the global and static, I guess.
Global and static both, or only the global first? Right. So that is what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, please try to observe the program and try to get your own list. That is, what after what constructor after what constructor, or what destructor and then which destructor or constructor. So all that sequence, that is what I'm trying to give you that. Okay, so as somebody pointed out, it is the global created before main, the object 1 constructor that gets called first. Then object 2, which is local automatic in main, local of main. Then local static in main. Then local automatic in create 5. That is, create function was called. Then object 6, static of create. Then 7, local automatic in create. So we are exiting, I think we are exiting the create now. So therefore, yeah, we exited the create. Therefore, the local automatic, which was object 7, that got destroyed. Object 7 got destroyed. Then once you exit create, anything else getting destroyed? Anything else getting destroyed once you exit create function? Look at the list. Object 5, right? So object 5 will be destroyed. Anything else now? We are exiting create. So anything else getting destroyed? Static local, that is static in create, local static in create, that is object 6. Will it get destroyed? Object 6, will it get destroyed? No, object 6 will not be destroyed because it is static, so it will be destroyed at the end. Okay, look at the next. It was constructor for object 4, automatic in main. Then main is getting exited, so therefore object 4 got destroyed. Then object 2, because it was again local automatic in main, object 2. Then object 6, which is local static in create, that getting destroyed, object 6. Then object 3, which is local static in main. Then object 1, which is global of main. Getting it? Did you observe the order of invocation of constructors and destructors? So another example, which will show you how to handle this time, class with star int, that is star hour, star minute, star second. That is, you have pointers to hour, minute, and second. So look at the time class definition, declaration. See how it is done, and accordingly you are supposed to write the constructors. Just observe the constructors and destructors in this page. We will write the constructors and destructors in the coming this thing. See over here. So whenever you call the time constructor, you're supposed to allocate new for hour, second, and minute, and then initialize all of them to 0. Then when you have int, when you have 3 parameters, then you are supposed to do new, and then again put the new values over here. Then when I say set time, then this is how you can set the time, because it's already allocated. So you're simply changing the time. Observe the code. Dynamic locations should be allocated to pointers first. So you can even observe the constructors and destructors also here. Look at the code and try to understand. Right. Any doubts? So we have come to the end of the topic. Any doubts?
No, sir.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So then I'll stop recording. No questions?
No, sir.
Yeah. So any questions on your what do you call mini project? How it is going on? Any questions or confusion or any data? Any information that you require on that? I hope now it is clear. So you are supposed to use all these things: constructors, destructors, copy constructors, dynamic memory allocation, whatever we have discussed in the class, however tiny it is. This pointer, I think Madam has covered few of the topics. So all those topics should be in your code.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All those points or all those topics will be looked at and assessed accordingly. We will look at your code and then assess your code and give the marks according to that.
So when will be the first assessment?
Usually the assessment was in person. That is, you were supposed to show it in person, the entire group. But this time we are still not sure how we will be running that. We will let you know. We are. I hope by that time maybe you people will be coming down here. Let us see how that can be done. All this time it was in person.
Okay.
Yeah. We will plan some way for doing that. Right. Okay, so we will stop it here. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.